Hi, welcome to Foxy's Little Nuggets, where the news gets boiled down, reality gets boiled off, and someone in government is left, well, drowning in their own gravy. I'm going to talk about Mauritius. So thanks for the islands. We're going to have the sea as well, they say, because Mauritius has now unilaterally extended its maritime claims around the Chagos Islands. This is following Britain's extraordinary controversial agreement to hand sovereignty of the islands to Mauritius. Under the 2025 agreement, Mauritius is recognised as sovereign over the entire Chagos archipelago, including Diego Garcia, while Britain retains extensive rights over Diego Garcia itself to operate the strategically vital US and UK military base. All well so far, except of course nothing has been agreed. Now Mauritius has moved to extend the waters it claims around the islands. Now, if we had a navy, we'd send a few gunboats in just to ensure that no, they didn't. But we don't have a navy, so yes, they are. They do have an irritating tendency, though, to start behaving as though they're sovereign. They're not. The Chagos deal was sold to Britain partly as a way of securing Diego Garcia for generations. Well, we already had that. We owned them. It was ours. Now, critics warn that handing over sovereignty would create precisely these sort of strategic problems. And here we are. Britain hands Mauritius the islands, agrees to pay for the privilege, rents back the military base, and Mauritius says, we'll have all the sea as well, including the fishing rights and the access, and then we'll give it all to China. Yay! Good God, we'll be starting to pay the Mauritians by Christmas. There we go. No wonder this country's going down the pan. Secondly, Burnham wants homes and sod the house builders. Andy Burnham wants a house building revolution. Unfortunately, the British house building industry currently looks as though somebody has driven a bulldozer through its accounts. Labour's target remains 1.5 million homes. Excuse me while I laugh. You could move that decimal point over to 150,000 homes, I think they'd struggle. But with Burnham promising a huge revival of council house building, even though he doesn't know anything about construction, hasn't got the land, hasn't got the planning, hasn't got the available builders to build, doesn't understand anything about construction or its finances, hasn't got the money, hasn't got the time frame. You get the drift. Hasn't got anything, but mainly hasn't got a clue. Meanwhile, the actual industry is wrestling with the weak demand, high mortgage rates, expensive materials, regulatory delays, and so on, as I've mentioned. Bellway, for example, their order book is down by about a fifth year on year, and it has called for stamp duty relief and help for first-time buyers. The brick industry itself is particularly in a grim condition. Stockpiles have ballooned while manufacturers cut production. Companies warn that Britain's ambitious housing promises simply do not match what it is even possible to build, let alone what's actually happening out there on Britain's building sites. Burnham, meanwhile, wants the biggest council house programme since the war. Splendid. But we've covered that. He can't afford it. Still, he keeps announcing the same thing time and time again, so maybe one day they'll magically appear. Ooh, spooky houses. Now, there's also a problem in this country with people's attitudes to halal, non-stun slaughter, barbaric slaughter, I like to call it. And a petition calling for the end of this barbarity without, slaughter without pre-stunning has now crossed the 100,000 signature threshold. This puts it firmly on Parliament's radar. Now, an important distinction here. This is not simply a campaign to ban halal meat, although that is ultimately what we want. The overwhelming majority of halal slaughter in Britain already involves pre-stunning. The controversy concerns the religious exemption allowing animals to be slaughtered while fully conscious, which can apply to some halal slaughter. My personal view on this is that, first of all, any animal killed by halal, the packaging must say in big letters, red on white background, halal. This big, halal. That's whether that animal has been killed by halal or not. That is to say, if it's been killed by halal, it has the word halal on it. Even if it hasn't been killed by halal, but it's been killed in a slaughterhouse that does allow halal to be used in that slaughterhouse, then all meat from that slaughterhouse must be marked halal. And I believe that each slaughterhouse must pay a fee to be able to have halal slaughter. And I would suggest that fee is £100,000 per month. And if you don't pay the fee, you can't have halal slaughter. And that seems fair to me. Let me know what you think about that proposal. But most people in this country do not want to see animals slaughtered in pain and agony in a barbaric and cruel way. Well, there's at least 100,000 of them. Anyway, going up north of the border, up Scotland way, Joe Farrell. This is a wonderful, wonderful story of hypocrisy on a grand scale. Because we're arriving at Police Scotland's Chief Constable, Joe Farrell, who, of course, stole. She was compromised within a week of taking the job, wasn't she? Stealing police resources. She signed an extraordinary intervention by Britain's police chiefs calling on Andy Burnham to prevent the early release of PC Andrew Harper's killers. Farrell joined police leaders from across Britain, warning that early release, which fails to properly distinguish between serious offenders and non-serious, risks undermining public safety, victim confidence, and the confidence in the entire judicial system. All these seem perfectly reasonable so far, until you come to the very, very tiny, tiny problem. Scotland has been using early release to deal with its own overcrowded prisons. The SNP government has already conducted emergency release schemes and changed automatic release arrangements for shorter sentences, arguing they were necessary because the prison estate was under intolerable pressure. Police Scotland has been working within that system. So apparently releasing prisoners early because prisons are overcrowded is deeply troubling when Westminster does it, but when Holyrood does it, it's all perfectly acceptable. To be fair, the scheme's not quite identical, and the Harper case involves a particular serious offending. But the principle is the principle. It's okay down there, but not up here. Early release in England is a threat to the confidence in justice. Early release in Scotland, needs must. It's not so much criminal justice philosophy as a postcode lottery. And finally, and I love this one, you're going to smash the like button. Just hit that like button now. Because after a day of politicians behaving like spineless creatures, we finish with some creatures who are at least spineless. Because voting is underway for the Invertebrate of the Year 2026. The finalists include the immortal jellyfish, capable of recycling its own lifestyle. There's a giant bumblebee named the Flying Mouse. And a leaf sheep, basically a large insect that just eats leaves like sheep munching grass. There is also a tiny sea slug that steals chloroplasts from algae and effectively uses sunlight to power itself. There we go. It means that somewhere beneath the sea is a slug that's achieved something most politicians never manage, being green and genuinely useful. But I think when I look at Invertebrate of the Year, some creature that does not have a spine, I'm going to go with the Labour Party. Let me know your thoughts. Thanks very much. Bye.